Hello and welcome to the Craft House Magic YouTube channel. My name's Ellie and today I'm going to sew a box to put all bits and bobs in, or maybe like a knitting or crochet project. Lots and lots of uses. Maybe you can add handles as well if you want to sort of carry it around, but I thought I'd make a simple box that's lovely and easy to make out of the new fat quarters that I've got in the shop. These are a range of Liberty fabrics that I've put together from the latest Postcard from Paradise set, and I've picked the blues and greens, but aren't they gorgeous? I love them. Absolutely love them. So what I'm doing is, just to make things a little bit simpler, I'm just going to use two fabrics to start off. You could make this into a patchwork and it'd be even nicer, but just for the sake of simplicity and showing it on the video, I thought I'd do it in two fabrics instead. So you'll need to cut two fabric squares that are 16.5 inches square. I've picked these two gorgeous fabrics. And I've also cut out a piece of wadding that's 16.5 inches square as well. I will be putting together kits where I give you enough wadding to make two of these and the fat quarter bundle with the buttons, and also an option to add thread as well if you wanted to sort of sew along with me. But you don't have to use these fabrics, you can use any fabrics that you've got at home. I am using an 80-20 wadding, which is an 80% cotton, 20% polyamide, 20% polyester, but you can use whatever you've got as long as it's not too thick. I'd use a sort of not very lofty wadding like this one. So I've got my two 16.5 inch squares, and I'm going to put one of the fabrics wrong side against the wadding at the back, and I'm going to put the other fabric right sides together and just line it up. Make sure the wadding's lined up as well, and I'm just going to pin it around the edges. There we are. I'm going to go over to the sewing machine and do a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around, but I'm just going to leave about a 6 inch gap so I can turn it the right way really easily. Now we've stitched around apart from this gap, I'm going to snip the corners. So I'm just cutting close to the edge, getting rid of some excess fabric so it makes a nice neat edge once you put it the right way. So I'm going to do that all the way around, being careful not to go too close to that corner there. Right, I've trimmed all the corners, so I'm going to turn it the right way. I'm going to use some type of pokey tool just to make sure the corners are nice and neat. There we are. So when I'm doing the edges, I tend to finger press and use my nails to crease along the sides to get a nice crisp edge there. So I pull it to the centre, finger press, and then put it back out again. You can use my nails to really make that crease crisp. Just helps to neaten it up a bit before you bring out the iron. I like to do this bit. And then when you get to this side where you've got a gap, you want to turn over about 1/4 inch, the same as where you've stitched along the sides, and finger press. I tend to do that on both sides so that it's nice and neat, so it's meeting nice and straight. Right, I'm going to get the iron out now and give this a quick press before we do the next bit. Right, this is all pressed nicely. You can see that I've got this gap here that I need to sew up, so I'm going to make sure that that's lined up, and I'm going to top stitch an 1/8 inch all the way around on the edge just to get that nice and closed up and nice and neat before we start doing a little bit of exciting quilting. Right, we're stitched all the way around. I'm just going to snip the threads, tidying up for the next stage. And if you wanted to, you don't necessarily have to do the quilting bit. So you could skip the free motion quilting bit or straight line quilting bit and go to the next stage. But I fancy doing a little bit of free motion quilting. So I'm going to set my sewing machine up to do a bit of free motion. If you want a little video tutorial on how to sort of get started with free motion quilting, I'll link it in the description bar down below, because I did a little clip of what settings to put on your machine, because I didn't want to go into that much detail in this video, but you don't have to do this bit. So I'm going to do a little bit of free motion vermicelli, I think, over the surface of this, just to give it a little bit of stability. And I do like the look of vermicelli as well. I think it probably won't show up so much on this side, but I think it'll probably show up okay on this side of the fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of vermicelli. If it's going to show up more on the inside, I think I'm going to have that right face up. So I finished the free motion bit. You can probably just about see it, maybe. I'm not quite sure if you'd be able to see it on camera. Let me pick the camera up so you can see it. You might just be able to see the texture of it. I'm not quite sure whether you can see it on camera or not. But by giving it a quilt, it's sort of made the texture a bit sort of dense. I think that'll be really nice. So the next bit is to start the assembly. Right, we have the square and we fold it in half like this, and I've got my lining fabric on the outside. So make sure that you've got the lining fabric on the outside of the square and you've got your outer fabric on the inside where you folded it in. And I'm going to put the ruler on top of where you've got the fold and the open side here. So you've got 45-degree angles on your ruler. I've got one black on there and there's a white one here. There is another degree, I think that's 60 degrees. So there's a 60-degree angle on mine as well, but the 45-degree is labelled 45 degrees. So I've got the 45-degree line across the edge where you've got the open edges of the two pieces here. So I've got 45-degree line there, so it's 45 degrees between that line and the line you're going to be marking along here. So what you want to do is slide it so this line is still lined up with this edge, but so that you've got 3.5 inches along this edge of the ruler, so the diagonal edge. And I'm going to mark that with a pen that's going to disappear. I've got one of these heat erasable ones. I'm going to mark that on here. So I'm going to pop a pin there to make sure I keep that straight. This is going to be our stitch line. I'm going to do the same with this side. What I'll do is I'll just turn it over so that I can use the same 45-degree angle. So as long as you've got a 45-degree angle between the edge of the fabric and the stitch line, and the actual length of this stitch line is 3.5 inches from side to side of the fabric. So you can see you've got the 45-degree line here, and this is your 3.5 inches from edge to edge. This is your open side and this is your folded side. This fabric is going to be your lining, and the fabric inside here is going to be the outside. So I've got a line there that's a little bit scruffy because my pen's running out, but I'm going to pin this here and stitch that along the line. So I've just stitched all the way across that line from side to side of the material. I'm going to trim those threads, do that with the side that we marked just a minute ago. Just make sure that these two edge fabrics are lined up really well. There we go, so we've done both of those sides. I need to go over to the cutting mat and prep the other two sides. So this way now. Right, so now I'm opening up that fold. You can see where we stitched on that side and that side. We're going to line up these corners and pin them in place like what we did before. It's going to be basically doing exactly the same with these two sides that we just did with the two sides we were looking at a minute ago. And getting that 45-degree line across there, moving it up so that I've got 3.5 inches in length, corner to corner, marking across and basically doing exactly the same. So I'll skip ahead to the point where I've stitched across this line and the other line on the other side. So we've got 4 areas where we've got this little pinch mark. Right, there we are. I've got 2 more lines ready to stitch. I'm just going to go over to the sewing machine and do the same on this side and this side. So we've got 4 of these little pinched areas. Right, we've got 4 little side bits sticking out. We've got the right side on the inside and the wrong side on the outside at the moment. We're going to do something a little bit crazy. Are you ready? You're going to cut 1/8 of an inch from that stitch line. I know it sounds a bit crazy, but it'll be fine, trust me. Just using the rotary cutter, you can see that I've done 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to do the same on the 4 sides. There we go. Right, we're now going to turn it the other way. This is looking better. Right, what I need to do is get the ironing board out and we're going to press these seams. It's like as if you're doing a French seam this. You're basically going to be pressing it and pinning it in place and then stitching down the edge and then up the side so that they'll be nice enclosed seams, and it will all be a little bit more like a box. So I'm going to get the iron out and give that a press. I've got all these little bit of extra triangles here. I have to think of something to do with those as well. Just be careful with your fingers if you're doing this. Just lightly press the edges like so. Even better, use a tailor's ham or something. But I'm just being a bit lazy about getting it out. Oh dear. So once you've done that, if you squeeze your seams into place and just press it on the top like that, pop a pin in place, and then we're ready on that seam to do the seam. So I'm going to do the same all the way around. Right, that is the last one. So this edge is the diagonal edge of your opening. So you want to stitch 3/8 of an inch all the way along until you reach where the sort of point here is. And so I want you to stitch out to that point and then just back stitch there. So on every side, you're doing like an L shape and then out to where the point is. That's all you need to do on each of the sides. So I'm going to get on with that bit. So on my sewing machine, the edge of my 1/4 inch foot is 3/8 of an inch. So I'm going to follow the line, the edge of this foot, to measure 3/8 of an inch. And I'm going to be stitching all the way along here until I get to about there, and then I'm going to stitch outwards and back stitch here. I'm starting with this end because I can make sure that the 2 diagonal edges are perfectly meeting, so that that's the edge that's going to show the most really. It's always going to be the best finish. Right, I've just got to in line with that corner. I'm going to turn it and stitch out to the outside. There we are, that's one side done. So there we are, we have the base sort of finished. The inside is completely enclosed, that first stitch line we did, because we trimmed it down to 1/8 of an inch, and then 3/8 of an inch gives you plenty of room to make sure that you don't catch that. So that is nice and easy. The next bit that we need to do is just fold these over, pin them in place like so. What I'm doing is I'm just lining up the position where we've stitched from either side and folded that over and pinning it down, and you can start to see what it's going to look like. There we are, we've pinned the edges down, and I have got 4 blue buttons that I'm going to sew on each of the sides there. You can either hand sew them on or use a sewing machine if you want to. I think I'm going to sit and hand sew these, but you can already see that's quite a nice little roomy bowl. Great for presents and gifts, and I think that would be nice to have in your lounge to put a little like sock or like a knitting or a crochet project in. You could even pop some handles on this. So if I develop it a bit more and put some handles on, I will show you how I've done it. But in the meantime, I need to get these buttons on. So the positioning of the buttons is up to you, but I think I'm going to put mine about there. So I've threaded my needle, put a knot in it, and I'm coming in from the back of the little triangle. You could, of course, do these in lots of different sizes. This is obviously a 16.5-inch square. If you did a larger one, you could make a larger bag. So I've got that attached now. I really need to make sure it goes sort of through a bit to the back fabric. If you made a smaller one, you could have a little trinket bag. You could make it whatever size you wanted for any sort of gift, or little storage boxes for your craft room, which is always a good thing. I tend to do 3 passes on buttons for things, but that's probably just me. You can do whatever you want. Wrap it round a few times and then knot it. Bury the thread and then I can snip that off. There we are, that's one finished. I'm going to do the other 3 now and then I'll show you what it looks like. So there we are, it is all finished. The dimension is about 7 inches wide inside, square, and plenty of room to put a nice little project or a gift in there. And obviously the depth is about 3.5 inches because that's the length of the edge that we were sewing. You could always do a larger or a smaller one for different purposes, and it's a great way to use fat quarters up. Don't forget that these fabrics are available from my website if you're interested, and kits for the bag as well. You will get 4 buttons, a fat quarter bundle and enough wadding to make 2 of these boxes. Just to give you an idea, you can get 2 balls of opal yarn in there, so plenty big enough for a little project. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye!